And just like that, this buck walked out of my life. What I did not know was this would be my only opportunity at a buck for the entire 2024 season. Rolling into 2025, I knew we needed to make some massive changes. My dad and I came up with a new strategy in order to establish more food and cover on the farm. A lot of this was focused on utilizing corn to do so. In years past, we had a lot of success growing what most people commonly refer to as greens, using the no-till method for our food plot. However, when trying to grow things such as corn, soybeans, and milo, this was 0% effective. After lots of thought, I decided I wanted to try to grow these crops organically using an inter-row cultivator. This method involves working up dirt, which I deem to be the lesser of two evils compared to herbicides. While I would have loved to make the no-till method work, I had to have the realization that the bigger picture is for us to kill deer. If I couldn't get anything to grow, then there really wasn't any prize in having the world's healthiest soil. All of our planting was done by early May, and we could tell almost instantly that this method was working. By the end of June, we already had a buck showing up consistently on camera. The first week of July, I was excited to see the same buck with an even bigger buck at the camera over our old mineral spot. At this point, the crops were really taking off. Fortunately, we had been getting a lot of rain. This made it tough to schedule time to cultivate, but luckily we found a few windows and were able to effectively suppress the weeds enough for the crops to outcompete. The two bucks showed up together once again, and you could definitely tell the bigger of the two was more dominant as he pushed the other buck around. Around this time, we left the farm to pursue axis deer and mouflon sheep in Hawaii. While we were there, we continued to get pictures of the younger of the two bucks. When we returned home from our trip to Hawaii, we were greeted to a field full of sunflowers in bloom and head-high corn that was starting to tassel. I continued to get pictures of the younger of the two bucks, and by the looks of it, he was going to shape into a clean 10-point. I got pictures of this buck nearly every day up until July 23rd. Then he vanished. I kept calm at first, but the days turned into a week into 2, then 3, and I had pretty much accepted that he had moved on. I was super disappointed. I began questioning everything we had done recently, wondering if something we had done pushed him away. We have 2 houses on the property and are very active on it, so I wondered if maybe we changed something up that no longer made him feel comfortable. What would happen next would absolutely blow me away. On August 15th, over 3 weeks later, he returned. Not only did he return, but he never left. The trail camera would capture this deer at all hours of the day. Early in the morning, late in the evening, multiple times throughout the night. It was absolutely insane. Never before have we had a buck that made the farm his home the way this deer was. Let's not forget, this is 40 acres with 2 houses. It isn't exactly some hidden sanctuary. Despite that, this deer was calling the farm his home. With all the pictures, my excitement grew. It was at this point I decided the buck would be my target buck for 2025. With the overload of pictures, something quickly became apparent to me. The buck's left main beam had somehow become damaged during his hiatus. His G4 on the right side also hadn't amounted to much. Since he was still in velvet, I began to question how he was going to turn out. Nonetheless, I continued to enjoy the show from the trail cameras. On August 22nd, I got my first in-person look at the buck, but not in the way I expected. At 4:30 in the morning, on my way to work, just down the road at the neighbor's bean field, he decided to run out in front of my truck. In a split second, I could instantly realize it was him as I stomped on the brakes. Right at the last second, before hitting my passenger front fender, he turned back into the beans. What a relief. No sooner than I set my things down at my desk, I got a trail camera picture of him in his usual spot. Crisis averted. The pattern continued like usual. On the 26th, I got a picture of him around 10 a.m. running through the field, clearly spooked by something. Obviously not a good sign. I worried for the next couple days after not seeing him, but it proved to be for nothing, as he showed up in daylight one of the following evenings. With a couple of weeks left until season, I was extremely excited to have him around this consistently. I knew he needed a name if he was going to be the buck I was pursuing. I'm not sure why, but I thought a little harder on this one than normal. Personality-wise, he didn't really stand out to me. Sure, he lived here more than any other deer, but there were no dominant characteristics or anything goofy that stuck out. I decided to look for something in his appearance. I couldn't look past the rack. He was the only buck I'd ever seen on the farm damage his rack that bad in velvet. His G4 on the opposite side still wasn't anything to speak of either. It wasn't cool, flashy, or heroic. Maybe it was a little goofy, but I settled on calling him Stubs. With the season nearing, it became clear that we had a secret weapon, and we didn't even know it. In June, we dug out a spot to put a water hole in on the corner of our property. Over summer, we really didn't get any action at it. Judging by some of the trail camera videos, the deer weren't too sure of it at first. And with the summer heat, I knew it probably wasn't going to get much action from baking in the sun either. But as September rolled around, the temperatures dropped, Stubs had found his new favorite attraction. He was watering there daily, staying close, and even passing through during a downpour. Surprisingly, he was even letting the other deer know that the spot belonged to him. We were days away from the opening day on September 15th, and I started to think about my game plan. For some reason, Stubs was still holding his velvet. This was the longest I had seen a buck on the farm hold on to it. This made me want to get him even sooner before it started to peel off. After studying the trail camera photos, I realized that most of his activity had shifted to the morning, right before first light. This pretty much canceled out the idea of getting after him in the morning. I knew if I were to go in there, he would already be nearby, and I'd for certain bump him out and maybe ruin my chances altogether. A couple days went by without a picture. Based on the photos I had got, I had a pretty good idea what was happening. Opening day came, and sure enough, he was in there right before first light that very first morning. A good call on my part staying home. Sure enough, as I had expected, he showed up with the last of his velvet hanging on by a thread. So, I wasn't going to get my first velvet buck, but at least he was still around. I decided I was going to hunt every evening and just hope he came out early to get a drink. I hunted the first 4 days of season with no sign of Stubs. Part of me began to fear maybe he had sensed my pressure from that hot first week of season. On the 20th, I got a picture of him at the mineral and at the water hole. Then again on the 21st. I also got a picture of Hoss on this same day. I couldn't believe he was back either. I knew I had to get back in there as soon as my work week had ended. On the 23rd, once again, I got a picture of Stubs watering before daylight. As the day progressed, the weather became unusual. It had been hot and dry for a while, and we finally got some showers throughout the day. I told my wife I had a good feeling about the day. In the old farm days, before we lived there, we only ever seemed to see deer when the weather turned poor. I asked her, so who's it going to be tonight, Hoss or Stubs? She said Hoss. Fair enough. I would have been happy with either, but my heart still really wanted Stubs. Yes, he was smaller, but I had so much more love for him since I had been watching him all year long. I headed to the stand early that night just in case the weather got the deer on their feet sooner. Sure enough, I saw does before I even left the driveway. After sneaking around them, I got into the stand and had some more does work in pretty quickly. They stayed out in the field for quite a while and kept working closer as the sun continued to disappear. As I watched, I felt my phone go off for a trail camera notification. I expected it to be in the woods a few hundred yards away as I had the others surveilled with my own eyes. I looked down, and by the time it loaded, I was surprised with the buck at the water hole. I looked up, and there was Stubs. I don't know if it was the does already in the field or my dad hunting in the blind just 50 yards away, but he seemed kind of uneasy compared to usual. I knew if it were going to happen, it was going to happen fast. I slowly reached for my bow and got ready. I only had 12 minutes of legal light left. The clock was ticking, and he was already on high alert. I made a perfect shot, and he took off through the field towards the south. He only made it about 50 yards, and my dad saw him go down. Neither of us could contain our excitement. We packed up and got over to him right away. We took a moment to pay our respect to the incredible animal that called our land home. It was a really special moment. So much time, work, money, energy, and love went into curating our farm for a deer like this one. It was an overload of emotion. When I got back to the house, I walked in and told my wife, "Wrong deer." It took her a minute to understand what I was saying. I said, "It wasn't Hoss," and she couldn't believe that I killed Stubs. We drove back out into the field to get some pictures and load him up. Stubs. It was an honor. May your spirit live on for eternity. Thank you for your sacrifice.